poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Well, hello there, my friend, and welcome to the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today's guest on the show has made his livings in the cash game streets for the past 14 years and has quickly built up a rabid YouTube following of nearly 50,000 human beings as of the release of this episode, Mr. Johnnie Vibes Moreno. For Johnnie, poker's always been a family affair. His brother Andrew is a high-stakes live crusher, and his sister-in-law is future CPG Hall-of-Greatness member Kristy Arnett-Moreno. But as you are about to learn, gambling has not always held a warm and fuzzy place in Johnnie's heart. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for his little brother Andrew's passion for poker and insistence that, in the words of Rounders legend Joey Knish, maybe this is a game that can be beat, there probably isn't a universe where Johnnie ends up as a professional card player. Luckily for all of us, the Morenos have a knack for playing poker at an extremely high level, and the entire poker world is better because of it. In Johnnie and I's conversation, you're about to learn the unexpected career Johnnie walked away from to pursue his poker dream, a greatness bomb on why you ought to take even the smallest of tasks seriously, the catalyst to Johnnie starting his YouTube channel, and much, much more. So without any further ado, I bring to you live cash game crusher and YouTube phenom, Johnnie Vibes. Johnnie, welcome to the show, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Nice to meet you and happy to be on.
Nice to finally meet you as well. And you know, typically on this show, we start at the same place, and that place is where, tell me the story of how you got involved with playing cards.
Oh, man. So it feels so long ago now. I've been in the game for about 14 years, primarily like playing for a living that entire time. And
how old are you?
I just turned 40 last week.
Oh, God. Is that a congratulations? It's like
no, it is. I feel good. I feel fine with it. Married. I'm happy with the place that I'm at in life. So it wasn't a somber birthday.
Yeah.
But I think that my path to poker was similar to a lot of people that are kind of in this time frame, like in the 40s range or 35 to 40 range. I was introduced from my brother, who was like really kind of drawn in by the moneymaker boom. He started playing like in 2004. Right after that, when it was always on ESPN, it was like the right time frame in his life. He was 18, 19 years old, playing in his friends' basements and things like that. I had gotten a 2-year degree and in computer science. I was writing software for a company in Indiana, and we were living together. And every day he would come home and he would I would come home and he was on the computer just clicking buttons on Party Poker and Poker Stars and all these things. And in my mind, I'm like, bro, you're just like, what are you doing? Like, I gave you the path. I went to college. I have a job now. I'm making $50,000 a year in Indiana. You could be doing this if you just quit throwing your life away on poker. And it was a little bit of a back and forth, because I'm the older brother and I'm supposed to be guiding him. But slowly by slowly, I kept realizing that he was paying for his life significantly through poker. So I started to open up my mind a little bit around it and kind of watching him. And he was like mentoring me without even knowing it at first, and then full blown mentoring me.
Where did those reservations come from?
It just came from the way we grew up, honestly. I mean, we were very low income. My grandpa, he had like a drinking problem, and he would also like lose money at the casino. So he was like a bad gambler. So my mom grew up with like this thing that, gambling is bad. And I thought that too, honestly. And I still think that gambling has, some problems with it for sure for a lot of people. So I never did. I didn't even like, when I was 25 years old, I had never even played blackjack or I do have one gambling story that kind of scarred me for life when I was younger. I was in middle school and we were playing basketball, and it was just like pickup basketball. And I was a little bit taller for my grade. I'm 6'5" right now. People get so blown away when they see me in person. But I was a basketball player, and there was an older kid that was like 3 grades older than me. And I remember thinking like I could beat this guy. And we were at the playground. So I started like showing off and like putting moves on him and stuff. And I was like, "Do you want to play one-on-one?" And given that he's 3 years old, I mean, the difference between 12 years old and 15 years old is like massive when it comes to like how physically developed you are. But I kind of had this confidence about me that I could beat him. And he was like, "Sure, do you want to bet?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You want to put some money on this?" I was like, "Oh, I don't have any money." He's like, "How about a video game?" I'm like, "I don't know, man." And he's like, I don't even remember what it was. It was like, "I'll trade my Street Fighter for your Mike Tyson's Punch Out," or something like that. And I was like, and all my friends were like, "Do it, you got him," you know? And I was like, okay. So we played and I beat him. And then he like kind of bullied me because he was like older, and he's like, "No, we have to win by 2 to like win." And I remember like kind of fighting back and kind of just giving in and say, "Okay, that's fine. I'll beat you by 2." And he ended up beating me. And that actually, like me physically walking into the house and taking the video game that my dad had bought for me. My dad worked in a factory, and feeling so much shame around losing something that was like a gift and something that my dad had worked hard for. I kind of kept that inside of me, and I was like, wow, this feeling of losing in gambling is something that I really never want to experience again. So I was so far away from ever thinking about gambling when my brother started playing poker and introducing me to the game.
And how did your mom react? And Andrew, by the way, is Kristy Arnett, former Chasing Poker Greatness 2X guest. Andrew is Kristy's husband and Johnny's brother.
Yeah, my mom was in college until I was 14 years old. So she didn't have we were like living on food stamps and my dad's factory job and things like that. So she was not really into it. But because my mom and I were so close in age, she had me when she was a teenager. I was kind of the quote unquote man of the house. My parents were divorced, and she kind of just trusted me. Like I did a lot of things for the family, like I would help her out with like watching the kids. I would do laundry. I would clean the house. So when I validated, "Hey mom, I'm actually playing poker along with Andrew," that kind of shifted my whole family's outlook on it, because they were like, "Oh, our son who is working in corporate America writing software is placing his stamp of approval, someone that, we really trust, on what Andrew's doing, playing poker for a living." They were immediately open to it. So that helped a lot. But when I was writing code and my brother was playing poker, it was my job to convert Andrew to college and to basically fix him.
Yeah.
And he ended up, fixing me and making me realize that there's more to life than just punching a clock, and that there's other ways to make money through your own like hustle and drive.
No, that's great. And I think that's just such a good testament to, your parents and the people of authority that like they trusted you and gave you permission and the room to explore something that they had previously been opposed to. I think that's just, for people who are parents listening in the audience right now, I think that's just such an incredible gift to give your kids, to explore, their path and explore things that interest them. And maybe it does not mesh well with your belief system, but maybe it's viable anyway. And just keeping an open mind and not being closed-minded, I think like just a lot of harm can be done in those very, very, very important relationships.
Yeah, no, 100%.
How did you feel when, you're trying to convert Andrew and he's like pushing back on you like, "Nah, man, I don't want to convert. I want to keep doing this."
Well, it was tough because at the end of the day, we were really good friends. It wasn't just that I was his older brother. So as much as I would push, I would also allow him to be who he was as a friend. So I wasn't that over the top strict with him. I let him live in a condo that I had bought. Crazy. I paid $50,000 for a condo in Indiana that was like a really nice condo. My mortgage was $298 a month. So I can let you live here for free.
Right.
So, I was supporting him in a lot of ways. So as a big brother, like as much as I wanted to steer him, since we were friends, I kind of just let him figure it out on his own. And I was kind of always there for him.
So you're experiencing poker through him by osmosis. What was the point where things changed for you and your relationship with poker that was like, hold on a second, like this is actually kind of interesting?
There was 2 distinct turning points in my mind, actually 3 now that I think about it. And one of them was a day that I was at work cranking away on some code, and Andrew just decided to start sending me the confirmation emails that you get after you win a sit and go. And I think he was playing heads up sit and go. So it's like, 50% chance of winning. But there was one day where he sent me like 50 congratulations, you have finished first place in a tournament emails. And then I was like, what is going on all in one day? So like I go home and I'm like, what happened today? Like, show me what you're doing. He's like, oh, I'm playing these sit and goes. And I'm like, well, what was your account but when you started the day, and where is it now? And he was like, he showed me, and he's like, there's a strategy to this. So that was kind of like the first light bulb that kind of went off. Another one was he was playing these step tournaments on Party Poker. And I remember I was laying in bed watching NBA basketball, Indiana Pacers. And he comes in the room and he goes, hey, bro. And I'm like, what's up? And he was like, I just won $16,000. And I was like, what? He was like in the living room playing poker. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's like almost half the amount of money I make in a year, And he's like, yeah, I was playing these tournaments where you start with like a dollar, and I had made my way up to like the 5th step. And now I'm playing in a $16,000 buy-in tournament tomorrow. And I'm like, wait, you have to gamble with that 16,000? And he's like, yeah, it's part of the model of like the stepping and things like that. And I'm like, now I'm freaking out. Like, can't you just, can't you cash this out is what I'm thinking. So eventually nobody was playing this higher step because it was such a big buy-in.
I remember that step. There was like the 500, the 1K, and then that giant one that like basically you had to coordinate it with the other people on like 2+2 to even get the damn thing running because it would just never run.
Exactly. And he didn't know what 2+2 was. He would sit down every other day. There'd be 4 people that would sit and it would never fill up. And he tried for like a month straight. So he finally emailed support, and they were like, yes, we're just going to let you cash this out because we can't get this game going. So he ended up being able to cash it out, which was obviously another turning point for me. We're like, wow, somebody's taking this amount of money from an online site. And then the third and final thing was we had a tournament in Fort Wayne that was kind of like the annual poker live tournament. And he got second place in that tournament for some big amount of money. I want to say it was like around $10,000 or something. So those 3 things kind of combined made me realize that he was better than the people that were playing, especially in Fort Wayne where I lived, but also in these little niche games that he was playing online. And I never really even had to lose. I got to come home from work and just sit over his shoulder and have him show me what he was doing without me ever having to deposit a single dollar. So by the time I was ready to throw like $50 onto Bovada, I had already kind of had this like tight, aggressive strategy in position that could win in 2006 and 7,
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite quotes is like you can recognize the pioneers because they're face down in the dirt with arrows in their back. And like when you're a pioneer and you're on your own and you're figuring shit out where all the buttons are and like just all the nuances of poker strategy, life is difficult and there's a high failure rate and it's frustrating. But when you have somebody that is on the path and shows you the path directly, especially back in like 2005-ish era where it's very rare to stumble across somebody that's like another winning poker player. That's just such a massive edge. Like it's such a massive gift. You can't even put a value on it.
Yeah, there's no possible way that I would have ever stumbled into poker if it wasn't for someone like my brother who lived with me, who was so all in on the game, who persevered through the period of time where most people fail. I mean, the chances of me ever getting involved in poker is 0.0000 without this. And then, not to mention, everybody has ups and downs in poker. And there was a time in poker where, I struggled. Everybody struggles. And a couple years in, I had lost all my bankroll through like poor bankroll management. And my brother was there to just hand me $20,000 and keep me going along my way and mentor me. And then my brother struggled at times, but we never lost all of our money at the exact same time. So anytime he struggled, I was able to get him back in the game. And anytime I struggled, him or Kristy were able to get me back in the game. And without that support system in place, I might not have been able to survive to the point that I am now. It's invaluable.
Absolutely. And for the listener here, talking about, going broke or basically losing your bankroll, I think it's very important to add that, like, in the cash game streets, it's not that players go broke always because of a lack of skill. It's that life is expensive and your bankroll is your livelihood and you pay your bills through your bankroll. And so, like, you can win 100K and spend 110K in a year and you feel broke, right? Like, or you go broke,
Especially when I'm in my mid 20s and I'm going through a breakup and I just left my corporate job and I'm living in Vegas and I make $30,000 in a month and a half. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much money. I used to make 50,000 in a year. This is cash in my pocket. We're going to excess. We're trying to meet girls. I'm taking a week off from poker so that I can go see my friends in Phoenix. I fly to Barcelona so that I can hang out with my Swedish friends. I don't play poker for a month and a half. And then I'm like, wow, I actually just spent 25K of this money. I need to go back to the poker table. I only have 5K in my pocket right now. And then
you lose the 5K.
And then I have a couple losing sessions and it's like, Kristy, I need to borrow money. And she's like, what are you doing? You made 30K like a month and a half ago.
Yo, Kristy, we're being a young, dumb kid. That's pretty much the answer, is like all poker players, I think, at that age are just young and dumb and think that, like, yeah, they're just bulletproof and don't really think about the consequences of these things. It's, it takes time to find your footing as a professional and really understanding like what a professional actually means as it relates to poker. For us, man, we're forging our own path. We didn't have these people to look at, these like digital mentors to kind of give us guidance in our career. It's like, we're just figuring this out on our own. Like, we're kind of the first wave of this new age professional poker player.
Yeah, 100%. And the people that were, popular back then were, the Phil Ivies and the Daniel Negreanu's and the Mike Matusows and all these characters that we had on TV. There was no like signing up for a master class or, getting a Raise Your Edge subscription back then. It was like, if you don't stay up to date on figuring things out, if you're not data mining, if you're not pouring through your stats, eventually the people are going to start passing you by. There's going to be younger, hungrier people. And I was in this mindset that, like, if I'm winning this much in a 2-5 game, I don't really need to move up in stakes. I don't really need to work too hard because I'm always going to be able to print money at this stake and survive. And when you're like making money without working hard, it can lead to disaster in a lot of ways by not staying up and feeling like, there was a 5-10 game that I was playing in San Diego where everybody was so bad and I could just go in every single day and play like a pretty simple strategy and not work too hard and win money in the long run. But that just went away. The game died. The place closed down. The building's actually bulldozed now, and now there's no 5-10 running in San Diego anymore. So things change, and I always like thought that they would just be like the same forever.
Yeah, I think most young poker players think that until, I didn't realize I could get fired until Black Friday happened. Like, that was like, holy shit, I just got fired and I have no backup plan. Like, what am I doing with my life right now? Going back to your journey, you mentioned that you eventually moved to Vegas from Indiana. Like, when did that happen? Like, once poker got a hold of you, you make your deposit, you run it up, you have some success. Like, what was the transition period between, like, because it feels like a pretty important point in your life when you quit your job, this career you've earned and that you value. So tell me about making that decision and what happened after that.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Andrew and I were very close in terms of our friendship. And there was a point where him and Kristy, they came to me and they're like, "Hey, we're moving to Vegas." And I was like, "Okay, you guys, I'm supporting you. I'm gonna miss you guys so much because it's like my sister and my brother. You know, they lived with me. We had this like three-way family unit that was super tight. So when they said that they were leaving, I was sad. Of course, I helped them move to Las Vegas. We packed up the car, the U-Haul, got them there, and then it was Memorial Day weekend, and we were just like drink. It was my first time in Vegas. I had never been to Vegas, and we're just, it's Sunday. We're drinking on the strip, and it's 75 degrees out, and I live in Indiana, and I have to say goodbye to them. And I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't feel like real life. Like, this feels so amazing. I'm going to go home and go back to work, and they're going to stay here and just try to grind and try to make a living. And that felt so exciting to me at the time. But the responsible me was like, I got to go home. So I went home, spent 6 months back in Indiana, but every night, for sure, when I would go home, I was on Bovada, like playing 25 cent, 50 cent, playing sit and goes. And over time, I started to develop like a little bit of a confidence that maybe I could do this, And it was more that I just missed them so much. So I went to my job and I'm like, "Hey, I got to go to Vegas." It was 6 months later. I got to go to Vegas. My brother lives there now. And I need a change in my life, and I miss them so much. So they were like, "You can keep your job and move to Vegas. Like, you can ride coat from Vegas." So it's hard to say no to that guaranteed paycheck. So I was like, let's give this a try. So I went there, and then now I have my remote job. And then every single day I was spending less time on my job and more time at the Bellagio. And after a while, I'm like, I think I can make as much money, if not more, playing poker if I put in similar hours. So that was it. I was like, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work out, I can always go back to writing code. Like at the time, people that wrote code were pretty valuable. So
they still are, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's a lot more competitive now. It was a little bit easier to get a job back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit and I went all in with poker. And
how did that feel?
Every single day that went by, I mean, it was scary for sure. And I thought in the back of my mind, like, if this doesn't work out, I can just always go back to my job, or I can always go back to writing code. But every single month that went by that I was living life on my own terms, and that I was like going through the ups and the downs and having the rewards of, making my own schedule and being able to, visit friends when I wanted to, and making more money than I was making in software. I was like, it's like a spectrum, day one, I could go back to my job in a second. Month one, I'm like, I could definitely go back to my job if it doesn't work out. 6 months in, I'm like, I don't know. This is like, even if I have a downswing, I'm going to try to figure this out, because this is like, I'm liking this lifestyle. Year in, 2 years in, I would say about 2 years in, I was like, there's no way that I'm ever going back to working in software or working at a job. I'm going to figure this out, or I'm going to die trying.
Yeah, once you get a taste of the freedom and the autonomy, it's really hard to go back to somewhere where somebody else is calling the shots. It's very, very difficult. So those early years while you're in Vegas, did you have your own place? Were you living with Kristy and Andrew?
We bounced around. We lived off the strip in a house, the three of us, and then we wanted to try living on the strip. So we got a place at Sky Las Vegas, and just right down the street from Wynn. Played at Wynn all the time. That was the period of life after my relationship had ended. My girlfriend and I had moved to Vegas together, and that was a disaster. The Vegas lifestyle and everything. It ended in disaster. And at that point, I started to make decent money in poker. I was fresh out of a relationship. So I was like, let's move down to the Strip. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be able to grind a lot, and then we'll be able to like participate in the festivities of being single on the Strip. So we did that for maybe 2 years at Sky. That was a lot of fun. And then we ended up moving to another house off the Strip, just kind of bouncing around and figuring out the lifestyle that we kind of wanted. Funny fact is that we actually rented Alan Kessler's house off the Strip.
Just arbitrarily, or?
I think that Kristy had like interviewed him one time, and in passing, she was like, "Oh, we're looking for a new place," and he's like, "Oh, I got a place. You should check it out." So,
so you're living in Kessler,
yeah,
helping him make his way through travel and tournament coupons.
Yeah.
So you're in the cash game streets. Did you ever have any thoughts of playing tournaments? Were you always attracted to the cash game grind?
I mean, honestly, no. First of all, I didn't have a lot of respect for tournament players. I thought they were absolutely terrible poker players. And I thought that, the lifestyle of traveling and playing all these tournaments, it's like an up and down thing. And I was just there for the money. I was just there to scratch out a living and to make consistent money. And when you're playing in a 2-5 game and a 5-10 game and you're winning 70% plus of your sessions and your hourly is over $100 an hour, the thought of playing a tournament is like, why would I want to throw my money away on a lottery? So I didn't. It was just a combination of things that I thought that playing tournaments could affect my lifestyle in a negative way. But I just never went down that path. And there's been a transition in some ways where the softest games in poker right now are in tournaments. Like the worst players are playing tournaments, and the best tournament players in the world are reaping the rewards. So I'm like having some, back and forth with myself now. Like maybe in the year 2020, 2021, maybe it's time that I start exploring tournaments, especially now that I'm cultivating revenue streams outside of poker. This is like the first year that I've been able to build up a brand essentially and have some opportunities come my way to make money outside of poker. Also, like get invited to games. I got to play in a 50, 100, 100 game on WPT Cash Game solely because I make content. Like they wanted to have me on, and it was a good lineup with a few bad players. And I'm like, I would just never have this opportunity if I never made content. So opportunities have been coming my way, and now I'm starting to get the tournament bug. Now that I like don't have the like need to grind cash all the time.
It's funny because I feel the same. I feel the same bug, but there's a part of me that's like, okay, so there's whatever, this 2K tournament to play in, but then there's another part of me that like wants to walk in the poker room and look at the cash game lineup and be like, nah, I'm gonna, these are my people. This is where I go. So it's always this conflict, this inner conflict that I have with myself. You mentioned something though that I would like to address. You thought tournament players were worse than cash game players. I guess
my identity is wrapped up in being good at poker. So I thought that the best players in the world were cash game players, and which at the time was probably true. I idolized people like Tom Dwan and Victor Blum and these kind of people, Bill Galfon. And then, at the time, the tournament guys, I just didn't really resonate with them. And I thought that they were just clicking buttons. And I didn't think that it was like something that was like something that I really aspired to be. Like I wanted to be kind of like a great mind and a great thinker in poker. And I thought, when you get into like the 20 big blind range, poker is really just like a game of timing and, moving it in with the range of the hands that you want to do that with, and figuring out the range of hands that you want to call off with, and 3-bet fold with. Like that's kind of a pretty simple strategy. Whereas like I'm playing deep stack poker games, and we can go over one street on one spot for 3 hours with my brother. Like I found that so much more mentally stimulating than these like 50%, all ins kind of thing.
I'm not trying to throw you to the wolves because I had the same exact thoughts as a cash game player. Was like I kind of looked down on tournament players. Right. Again, I was very arrogant as a young adult too. So that's pretty much an idiot. So that's just sort of how I thought about things.
I mean, I have no problem saying that I was totally wrong. Like, great tournament players, they put in the work too. They put in the work differently than I was putting in the work. And that was just my ego talking. Like,
sure.
that wasn't actually true,
I mean, well, maybe not 100% true, right? I think too that there are some tournament players that have ran good in some very good spots who get kind of overrated. Like, I think that's the thing that certainly happened back then for sure. It's because like you get the prestige in the tournament and people think that like you win a tournament and then you're somebody, right? But as if playing a tournament for 3 days, that player has fundamentally changed from where they began to the end of this one single tournament. That to me always kind of rubbed me the wrong way of like, no, this dude, they won the main event, but they're not a significantly different player than where they started. So like we're crowning them because they won the most prestigious tournament in the world. However, a week ago they had 10K in winnings and like we're losing cash game players. So anyway, yeah, it's a lot of ego and a lot of like, I think cash game players maybe have a chip on their shoulder too. Like I know I do, where it's like, this is where real poker is played in the cash game streets. Like I don't respect somebody wins a tournament. Like, yeah, come on, come to the cash game streets. Let's battle. Let's see what's up.
Also, like, who knows how much they've bought in? Their Hendon mob looks like great, but maybe they're just a businessman firing away on all these buy-ins. And that's one of the reasons why I, had that chip on my shoulder too. And at the end of the day, it's the ego. Like I want to feel like I'm important. And when someone who wins a tournament, I feel like maybe they didn't earn it or maybe they don't deserve the accolades. That's just my ego talking. And, it's whatever. So yeah. I've come full circle with it. And if someone wins a tournament, like I'm not jealous about it anymore. I'm congratulatory, like great, people winning tournaments and the eyeballs on poker from, the accolades of everyone just is overall better for the game. People are going to be attracted to it. People are going to be playing tournaments more. People are going to bust out of those tournaments and come play the cash game. So it's good for an ecosystem to glorify tournament players. So I'm on board with doing it now.
And too, like I've noticed, and maybe you can relate to this too, but like basically when you see somebody do something that is like just so above the rim that you're like, wow, like, you're just kind of awestruck. And you kind of realize too, that like something like this happens, like the average everyday person sees it as like amazing and incredible, but they can't really appreciate how incredible it actually is. I see this kind of greatness in the tournament streets, just like watching replays, like Kristen Bicknell folding a boat to Dara O'Kearney in that hand. And it's like, fuck, man, that like, and it all makes sense. That entire hand actually makes sense. And Dara has no bluffs there. And that's like a very disciplined, great fold by Kristy. But like just understanding like all the things that go into it and being in the pressure cooker of like somebody's watching this is like live streamed. You're playing down for $1 million, having so much self-belief to execute in the moment is just blows me away. It's something that is so impressive that, it kind of gives me a little bit of goosebumps. I see tournament players doing these things and it's like, man, like I was way wrong about the tournament players because like the top tournament pros, they're incredible. They're amazing. They do things that are just like, look like magic to me.
Yeah. And the fact that they're buying into $100,000 tournaments and battling with the best players in the world. I mean, that speaks volumes. These guys are they're built differently. They're absolute animals. They're beasts. I've had an opportunity to comment on, do commentary on, high stakes games and these kinds of things. And that's something that I'll never presume to know what someone's thinking. And I'll never presume to think that someone's not, thinking on an insanely high level when they make a play. So if they do something that I don't understand, I'm never one to say that's bad or what are they thinking? I'm one to say, wow, their mind is like so far beyond what I'm even thinking at this point,
Yeah. I kind of go straight to like
what must they know? Like, what must they know to be able to make that deviation? Because obviously I'm missing something. And really, with so much information available, knowing like their whole cards and all the data points they have to analyze, like you can kind of reverse engineer what it is they must have known in that spot that led to that decision, which is cool for me. Like, I think that's something that people just do in general when it comes to like poker commentary, is just outright dismiss a strategy as being like lesser or a decision as being awful, when it's like, no, let's take a step back here and let's like really think about this, because there's a, something looking awful and you being ignorant of this strategy that's put in place both kind of look and feel very similarly. And so investigating those spots are really where a lot of the growth can come from.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this new concept that's been playing on Solve for Why. I don't know if you've seen it, the Poker Out Loud concept.
I have.
It's pretty interesting because a lot of times we're speculating on what someone's thinking, to make a certain play. And I love the concept because now we don't have to speculate. Like, they're actually saying out loud what they're thinking when they make those moves. And I had the privilege of being able to play on the show, and I did something and I talked it out. And I guarantee if I wouldn't have talked it out and people knew my thought process, they would have been like, what is Johnny doing? Is he just like punting off here on a 4-card straight board with like top pair and a flush draw? But I had the opportunity to talk it out and say why I was doing it. So it was like a unique insight into, what are people thinking when they make these moves?
Yeah, we did a thing in Greatness Village, which is my Slack community, where it was sort of like the online version of Poker Out Loud, where we played like a six-handed cash game for a couple of hours, and like everybody recorded their own screen and verbalized the thought process in the hands that they were in. And it was super cool. Because it's like, how is how I'm thinking about this hand? Like, does it match up with how this other person is thinking? Or if I'm speculating on like what I think their thought process is and the range of hands that they're making these decisions with, like, is it close? Which is just like I found myself kind of trying to find the right video in this moment of like, oh, I'm playing against him. Let's see what he was thinking at like 14 minutes and 22 seconds. And it's like, yeah, cool. Like, I was on point there.
That's a really cool concept. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And actually my plan was to mash them all up together. And then I realized how big of a project that would be. And then I kind of melted down and never did anything. They're just all like separated still. I still haven't spliced them together.
Yeah. I can't imagine software-wise production's already off the charts, but mashing all that up into a video is a lot of work.
It's insane amount of work. That's why I release pure podcast audio, because audio is much easier to edit than video.
Yeah, and I like the audio format as well. It's easy, it's natural. There's usually a lot of good information in it, and you're able to like push out content quickly.
Yeah, and it's a great secondary activity too. Like, you put in your earbuds and you're working out or taking a walk or whatever. You can just listen to a podcast and work out at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So at some point you become a vlogger. I don't know at what point that is. I know we're skipping a little bit ahead in your journey. So kind of walk me through what led up to you entering the content creation game.
There's a couple catalysts for this. One of which was, when you're surrounded by certain people, they just rub off on you. It's the exact same way that Kristy and Andrew got me into playing poker. They loved the game. Every single night when we would come home and have dinner, they were talking through hands. So just by being around them, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to love poker like they're loving poker. Kristy was a content creator. She did content for Poker News, Card Player before that. And I got to see like the fun that she would have being creative. She created a video that was like what people say in Vegas, and just like seeing the creative things that went into that. So being around her, and then also, running in the cash game streets in Vegas, I would run into Andrew Nemi at the tables, 10 to 12 years ago. So once I saw him creating content, I'm like, oh, this is a guy that I know, that I've played poker with, and it looks like he's having a lot of fun doing this. I'm gonna try this. I had already like been making videos where I wasn't in them. They were like little travel videos where I'd mash up songs and I was also mashing up my own songs. So I had this like creative thing that was fun for me. And I'm like, let's see if I can get in front of the camera. It was like not good at first. I mean, I'm just, didn't have any practice with public speaking or being in front of a camera. And I committed to 10 videos. I was like, I'll do 10 videos. I don't want to just do one and quit. So I picked a number, 10 videos in 10 weeks. And then on the 7th video, everybody started watching it like in one day. It was like YouTube figured out that people wanted to watch it. So and it was a video where I had lost a big amount of money in a short amount of time. I had lost like close to $7,000 in like 2.5, 3 hours. And I immediately recorded my reaction afterwards and, how I was upset and frustrated. And people just started commenting like, oh man, like I've been there, and like people kind of relate to the losing a lot and the humility and, me feeling down and things like that. So it's weird because YouTube notifies you through like a push notification when someone comments on your video. So I had been seeing comments come through on previous videos, but on the 7th video, I wasn't really getting notified because there's this threshold that happens when people start commenting on your videos so much that it just stops notifying you. And I was like, maybe people aren't really like commenting on this video. I went to sleep and woke up and there was like 300 comments or something. And I was like, what is happening? Like overnight. And then people were like, please give us more. Please tell us more about the poker. Please tell us more. So then I was like, okay, I can commit to, after the 10 videos, I was like, I can commit to, one video every 10 to 14 days, because at the end of the day, I wasn't making money doing it. It was just this creative outlet and it was something that people were asking for, but I was a grinder. So I had to kind of make my life through grinding. But at the same time, it was a fun project. And after a while, I started to see that potentially, not only was I having fun with it, but potentially it could be something that could add value to my life in terms of providing for my family. So I was like, let's keep doing this. Let's try meetups. I was booking casino meetups and just kind of going down that rabbit hole. And it was really good for me because I'm an introvert at heart. And this was really helping me become an extrovert and be more social and things like that. So in more ways than one, it has been very good for my growth.
So John, you've used neutralized flop leads in the past 24 hours, correct?
Yeah, so I got basically the slide with all the info on it on Friday evening, and yesterday I played a session of 1KNL on Ignition and played one particular pot that I remember where a fish just donked flop turn river into me, and I ended up winning with a hand that I would have folded before looking at the slide, but I ended up winning like a $400 pot instead, and the course is $99, so definitely paid for itself very, very quickly. And I think that'll be the case for even people that aren't playing as big as 5-10 no limit. Like, I think this is a course that will very, very quickly pay for itself given how much more donking there is at lower stakes. And I think one of the most common questions I see asked in the Greatness Village Slack group is, what do donks mean? How do I deal with donk bets? I think that's got to be like in the top 3 most frequently asked questions.
You ought to feel very excited when somebody donks into you because some good things are about to happen.
You said like you probably don't need anyone to teach the course, or like you can just look at the slide and learn all the info yourself. I feel like you, Brad, will have to be there because I'm almost sure that anybody who looks at the slide won't believe it looking at what they're supposed to do, and we'll have to confirm with you that like you didn't make a massive typo somewhere and that this is actually what they're supposed to do, because it's pretty shocking the optimal way to deal with fish donking into you on the flop is.
If you'd like to check out neutralize flop leads so that you're never again confused when a fish leads into you in a single raise pot, head to chasingpokergreatness.com/nuffle. That's chasingpokergreatness.com/NUFFLE. And now, back to the show.
Let me ask you about creativity, because you were in computer science and there is an art. You are creating things. Have you always been a person who's valued the creative side of life?
Oh, I've never really thought of myself as a creative person. Like I wasn't an artist growing up. I didn't play an instrument. I've always been kind of like the math nerd, the logic kind of person. So no, it wasn't something that I felt was natural for me. But through software development, I kind of realized that there's a huge creative part of that because when you're presented a problem, there's no there's like an infinite possibilities of ways to code through that problem. So that was kind of as weird as it sounds, that was kind of like my first foray into creative problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I loved writing code. At the end of the day, though, I I did pull a lot of energy, and I did like being social in the right situations. Even though my natural proclivity is probably to be more of an introvert, I found myself surrounding myself with people that were extroverts. Like all my best friends were like wild and crazy, even though like I was kind of the quiet one. So I always thought like I want to be more like them. I want to be more outrageous. I want to be more creative. So that was a process of me just trying to like put myself out there and be more of a creative person.
Yeah, and I think that pairing that with the vulnerability, your YouTube videos are very well done. Like they're produced at a high level that makes me very jealous.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that from day one. I mean, I remember the lighting in my videos was terrible. The way that I presented, the way that I talked was very monotone. The cuts that I did, just like everything, it was a learning process. It's like the first time you sit down at a poker table, there's mistakes that I'm making all over the place. I mean, no matter how good you are, you're always going to make mistakes. Even in editing, like there's videos that I upload sometimes when I'm like, oh, I messed this up, and it's always going to be that way. But when you have this thing in poker, in creative, in doing creative endeavors, kind of like always want to be leveling up and like figuring out something cool and new for the next video, or understanding some strategy better the next time you sit down in a poker session.
I would say you're selling yourself a little short because, in my opinion, they were really good fairly quickly. Like I remember checking out your YouTube channel. It was probably could be a year and a half ago. I don't know when it was, but I remember thinking like, damn, this design is good. Like all this stuff is good. It just pops out and it looks nice. And I wish I could make my stuff look nice like that instead of looking like absolute dog shit. So like, I do think that you did have, a natural talent. And of course, like the more you immerse yourself in something, the more you go through the motions, you figure out where all the buttons are, the better you get at said thing. And there's always things that you wish you would have done differently, or cuts that you now see were superior, and all this very nuanced and kind of small stuff. And I ultimately, though,
I don't want to add one thing. And I think that this is kind of like something that applies to everything and everything, like not just poker, but there's a quote, and I don't know the exact quote, but it's the gist of it is something like this: the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So the obsession that I have with like the cuts and the production value of my videos is the same obsession that I have with poker. It's like I want to like learn and do these things really well. And it's kind of interesting, like the highest value content out there is usually like it translates well to like how much that person takes their poker game, how serious they take their poker game as well. So that I think that's like a little a little cheat code for everyone to like analyze, like how am I doing this one thing is like maybe seems insignificant, but it's spilling over into every aspect of your life.
absolutely. And like, poker was an obsession, and that there's no two ways about it. That's what it was. It was my life. It wasn't this like, sometimes I think about poker strategy. It's like 24 hours a day. I dream about it. I'm talking about it with like, it is full blown obsession. And when it came to podcasting, just like with your vlog, like I love doing it. And that's why, we talked about me releasing 3 episodes a week and how that's like a lot. And the reality is that for me, it's pretty easy to release 3 episodes a week because I love doing it. Like I love having these conversations. It gets me out of bed. My wife and I were talking and just less than a week ago, and she's like, what would we do if we won the lottery? Like, what would you want to do? And I'm like, I would do the exact same shit that I do right now because I love it, which is like, that was actually a pretty nice epiphany. Was like, wow, like I love what I do so much that even if I had infinite money, I would still continue doing the same things that I'm doing. The scenery was probably better.
I relate to that a lot. There was this story. Have you been following the NFT thing lately? Like all this explosion with NFTs?
Vaguely, but I feel like I'm like a boomer who's like, what are we selling? Like freaking JPEGs to each other? Like, what is this?
So there's this guy, his name's Beeple. He goes by Beeple online. And he was making digital art every single day for like, I want to say 12 years. And he wasn't making any money doing it, but it was something that he loved so much that every single day he found time to create a digital piece of art. And here we are 12 years later, and he decides to take all of the things that he's done every single day and mash them up into one piece of art that represents the whole 12 years. And people recognize that like him doing that for 12 years and his dedication to that, they felt like it was valuable. Like, I don't know how valuable it was, but somebody paid $69 million for a one-of-one copy of this digital piece of art. And it didn't happen because by accident. Like, he's like, hey guys, I'm going to put up this digital piece of art. Do you guys want to come buy it? No, it was 12 years of obsession of doing something that he never thought he was going to make a single dollar for. He was just so obsessed with it that, you know, not everybody's going to turn their obsession into $69 million one day after making no money for 12 years. But I think it's a cool lesson in that if you are obsessed about something, it can lead to big rewards without actually like the goal of being the big rewards. The goal is the obsession, really.
And it's passion, it's emotion, it's love. I think that, you know, it's not a surprise that your 7th video exploded because you lost 7K in a few hours and you're raw, you're vulnerable. Humans are drawn into emotion, and like all of those digital pieces of artwork made over 12 years, you know, that represents love. That represents passion of like doing this thing, and humans identify with that. It pulls people in. You can't fake that. You can't just like want to make a poker podcast sort of like a factory. You bring in somebody and like you're just going to churn out episodes over and over and they're just going to be good. If the heart's not in it, people know. People are attracted to that kind of passion. And so it doesn't surprise me one bit. And like basically if you have that kind of passion in your life and you just keep at it, people will be attracted. People will find it, especially if you're working on your craft and you're trying to do it in the best possible way that you can.
Yeah, totally agree, man.
Okay, so, you know, you started your vlogging career. You gave yourself 10 episodes. You have this creative outlet, and, you know, the tipping point kind of comes at like episode 7. And then what was your internal dialogue like coming from, you know, just being a full-time grinder to like, oh, there's this thing that's kind of gaining traction?
Yeah, I think it's like with anything, like, well, like I said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So once I realized that people wanted to see more, now it's a game in my head. Like, how do I give people the most value? Because at the end of the day, the most value that I give them is what's going to have them subscribe, is what's going to have them follow me on social media. And so the game was essentially just building the biggest brand that I could, you know, while still being able to play poker. Because while building the brand and building out my social channels was a fun like game that I wanted to win, I wasn't quite sure like if it was going to make me the money that poker would make me. So I kind of had to cultivate the poker along the way. But it's really hard to do everything perfectly. And I didn't create a lot of content, you know, like people were always asking for more content. I had to like try to balance it. And the moment that you kind of like start spreading yourself thin, you kind of like don't do the other thing as good as you were doing it before. So I didn't really make a lot of strides in my poker game from the point that I started creating content to now. I kind of like leveled off there and put a little bit more energy into getting better at creating content. So at the time I was like a little bit like having second thoughts about it because my brother and I had a very similar hourly. Like you look at our graphs and you look at our stats, they were so similar. I mean, we talked poker all the time and like he was my mentor, so that would make sense. But then once I started creating content, his hourly just kept going up and he started playing like biggest game. Now he's, doing so well. He's like has a staking business and like I bought out of the staking business and now like I'm not making as much money as him, but yet now I'm like spending all this time on content. So I was having a lot of second thoughts like, what am I doing? Like, I love poker. Do I really need to be like creating all this content? Like I could be on the same path as my brother, but now here we are like 3 years later. My brother's thinking like, man, I should have invested some time into some other businesses because now poker's drying up. And every time I want to make money, I have to sit down at the poker table and trade my hours for money. And so the bigger picture was that I get to build something where I don't necessarily have to trade my hours for poker, which has been great.
Yeah, it's a long-term play, and the long term eventually comes, but it seems like it doesn't ever come fast enough. And it's very easy. One of my private coaching students, he's streamlined, plugged into the game, and everything is poker. It's full poker obsession every day. And like he's gone from, last October starting at 100 NL, having never played online before, to now like winning 50K in January at like 1K NL. And I'm just like watching it. And I'm like, God, man, it's like, I want to be in the streets. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this kid is just in 6 months. Like, he's like, yeah, man, like, I love it. I'm playing every day. I'm playing big. I want to see how far I can go, and I'm never going to do anything without a private coach before. Like, you've been so helpful. And I'm just like, fuck,
Yeah.
I want to be in the streets. Like, I want to be that kid again. But like, I do see, being in the streets was kind of what led me to content, and lacking fulfillment, and then finding fulfillment in private coaching and making the content. And so like, there's always give and take, and it's hard to do two things really well. You don't have enough time to do it, or energy. And so like, yeah, I see both sides of it, and I hear the siren song of going back to just grinding all the time. It's a hard thing to brush off sometimes.
I think that you can probably relate to this as well. Because poker's been our identity for so long, because making good money and cash games has been a part of our identity. And like, we identify as good poker players, we identify as cash game grinders. It's really difficult to let that go, because the moment that I now start like making equal amount of money or even more money creating content, now I'm a content creator, and that doesn't feel as like rewarding inside of me. Like, to me, the fact that I can tell someone I'm beating cash games for a good amount in the year 2021, it just feels better. So it's hard to give up something that's been my identity for so long,
Absolutely. I mean, I had the thought the other day, like, can I even call myself a professional poker player anymore? I've played 3,000 hands this year. Like, by the time 7 p.m. rolls around to where the games are good and the game at the stakes I want to play, like, I'm done. Like, I have no cognitive energy. I'm just totally fried and toast. And it would not be a good thing for me to put in sessions at that time of day and that mindset. And it's like, yeah, it's one of those things where I think that being a professional poker player is something that, like, it's an unusual path, and it's earned. We're forged through fire. We're forged through the dark days, and we've overcome them. And there's pride in that. That's like, man, I fucking made it. Like, I know so many people who have disappeared off the face of the planet who are on the same path as me, but I have persevered and I have made it. And it's very hard releasing that part of your identity.
Yeah, 100%. But at the same time, I look at people like Cole South or a friend of mine that I interviewed the other day, Max Altergott. And part of me is like, I don't want to give up poker because it feels like I maybe failed or like I couldn't cut it. But for them, they they made so much money in poker and they left poker and they're okay with like not being a poker player anymore because they're in this other phase of life where they're professional businessmen now. And to me, that's always been so hard. It's always been so hard to leave that, even if I'm successful in this business thing, because a part of me feels like people aren't going to identify me as a poker player anymore. And like, that's my identity. And I don't want to be like those other people that couldn't cut it, you know, but it's just stupid. Like, we have to be okay with the phase that we are in life. I have to be okay with the fact that I made great money playing poker for 12 years. And now like I'm a hybrid poker player where like I still make good money, but now I'm making money in other ways, you know, that's okay.
For sure. And, you know, Cole South is one of the most underrated legends of all time who, you know, is just one of the greatest poker players that have ever lived. And that's, you know, a great example of somebody that just had all the success and transitioned to something else and kind of just left poker behind. And that was okay. You know, it's, you know, there's, I think sunk cost is also kind of in play here where you invest thousands of hours becoming an expert and becoming world-class at something. It's really hard to walk away from all that time and energy you've invested.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've been going almost an hour and a half, and we've kind of skipped over like all of my questions, other than the first question, which is a thing that happens very frequently on the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. So some of these, I have some quotes here. You know, you mentioned somewhere that 150 hours is enough time to get a grasp on whether or not you're better than the competition, which I think goes contrary to like what a lot of people think, especially in the live poker arena. So would you like to expand on those thoughts?
So 150 hours, I don't remember saying that, but if I did say that,
it was in a written interview somewhere.
Okay. That I think that's a good enough sample size to realize if you are comfortable in the game and if you feel like you have a decent grasp on the competition. But if you're going to like consider quitting your job and going all in on poker, I think you have to have a minimum of like 1,000 to 1,500 live poker hours to like get a decent idea how you're doing at that particular stake. So 150 hours is not something that I would recommend for like quitting your job and going all in on it. But 150 hours of live poker, I think is enough to say like, you should be able to at least break even over this 150 hours if it's like a smaller size stake.
And you should have a decent understanding as to whether or not you have an edge in the game. I think after 150 hours, if you don't know that you have an edge in the games that you're playing in, you don't have an edge in the games you're playing in. And that's not a good place for you, because it should be very obvious. I mean, 150 hours, even though it sounds like a little as it relates to understanding your win rate, you should have a good idea of like the level of play around you.
That's a great way to say it. But like, if you're actually considering like playing poker and not working, you need to have like an idea of what your win rate is. And there's no way you're going to know your win rate unless you put in thousands of hours.
Absolutely. And 100% true. And it's very easy for you to misjudge run good with playing good and having an edge versus, you know, obviously not having an edge. Like that's something that kind of comes with experience.
Yeah. And I think what happened was I played 150 hours during the Embrace the Grind series that I had, where I played poker every single day for 5 hours a day for 30 days in a row. And I think what I said is that there was no way that I was going to lose over that 150 hours playing 2-5 because it's a highly exploitable game. And I knew that I would be able to at least break even over 150 hours. Like if I've lost over 400 hours of live play before, but those were there were some big chunks in there of like higher stakes. So like when I'm playing a game where I can only buy in for 1,000, I just knew that I could overcome the variance in 150 hours with the level of competition that I was playing against.
Yep. I agree 100%. What's the most unexpected thing that's come from your poker journey thus far?
I would say that the people that reach out to me telling me that I've had a profound impact on their life, because when I upload videos, that's not something that I ever thought would happen. I thought that people would enjoy them, that people would maybe find value in them. But this actually happened yesterday, and it's happened many times someone messaged me and said that I helped them with their sobriety. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how did me uploading YouTube videos help someone with their sobriety? I don't even talk about sobriety in my YouTube videos. But I was like, thank you so much. I don't get it, but thank you so much. And he's like, well, just the way that you approach like the downs and the way that you are calm and you try to look at the bright side on a lot of situations. I kind of thought about that in my own life, and it helped me through some tough times. And I'm like, that's absolutely amazing. And it's completely unexpected. And that situation isn't unique. Like that's happened to me over and over, where people have just said, thank you so much for your videos. They helped me so much. They've helped me through my breakup, and things like that. So that's the coolest part about it and the most rewarding part about it. And whenever that, something happens where it's tough, or I feel like people are being derogatory towards me or like dragging me, I kind of go back to the people that are finding value as like validation on, this is amazing. I need to drown out the noise and focus on the people that really care and that I'm helping.
Yeah, you've been a little bit of a lightning rod for some criticism with some other content creators, like Doug Polk and some of the Sean Deeb, I believe, as well. How have you managed to deal with that, make it through, and just be more resilient at the end of the day?
I look at those as really big learning experiences because I went from having no social footprint to having a pretty large social footprint within poker virtually overnight. So, I didn't know like how I would react until these things happened. And I considered myself like pretty well socially adjusted, pretty emotionally intelligent. But when I was faced with things from Sean Deeb and Doug Polk, I realized that I still have a lot of room to grow. I was taking things personal, and rightfully so, probably, but I probably should and could have reacted a lot differently. And I take those things as a learning experience. And actually, I'm pretty grateful for some of the things that have happened there. It allowed me to like take a look inwards. I mean, poker is so sick for this, but just the using poker as a tool for your own like personal growth is something that's so underrated, because you get to experience your emotional highs and lows like quicker, and you get to see insight on your own life quicker than the average person gets to see it. And same thing happened with me, having people drag me on social media. Is like I got to learn about myself quicker than when people reach out and they say, I love you so much, your videos are so great. Like there's no growth in that for me. But when I'm facing criticism, now I get to look inwards and like, why is this bothering me? Like, what can I learn about this here? So I'm now looking back. At the time I wasn't grateful, but looking back, I'm grateful for those experiences.
That's awesome, man. It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got to play until they get punched in the mouth. And that's when we kind of learn. And poker is a great teacher in that way, because you can think of yourself as strong and resilient. And then poker is going to test that. Poker is going to put a mirror up in your face and be like, how strong are you? How resilient are you? How good at this game are you? And you'll learn. You'll either break, you'll realize that like you're not the person you thought you were, or you're strong. You gain strength. You're exposed. You're vulnerable. You try to be the person that you want to be. And yeah, those are great teachers, right? You're getting forged by fire, and really, anybody can think that they handle criticism well, but when they get criticized publicly, that's the real test.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like as someone that identifies as a poker player and someone who's good at poker, like we both know, this is a part of our identity. So when Sean Deeb wants to say that I'm like not a good poker player after like never playing with me and never consuming my content, I take that personal. Like here's someone that doesn't know anything about me that is questioning my prowess as a poker player. So it was really frustrating for me, because and like it makes sense. Like I've never played with him. I don't play tournaments, which he plays tournaments. He lives on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast. So it's fine that he doesn't know who I am. I just need to like let that go. Like, you don't think I'm a good poker player. You don't know who I am. That's fine. Like I don't have anything to prove to him. So that was a big learning for me. And then with Doug Polk, it was like, sure, Doug Polk's one of the best poker players in the world. Like, why am I trying to impress one of the best poker players in the world or like validate myself to one of the best poker players in the world. He's probably like right with his criticism with me. Like I'm a shit player compared to him, and I just need to be okay with that, you know?
I think it's just it too. It's part of marketing strategy and something that Doug has just historically done well. Is like, you know, you're gaining traction, you're gaining influence, you're growing your audience, and picking a fight with you means that your viewers are going to go check out Doug Polk, because when you address it, you know, they get emotional, and it's like, to me, it's not something that like I feel comfortable doing, but I can also see what's happening there in the same way that like the whole Negreanu thing went down, right? Like he's been punching up at Negreanu for all of these years. Negreanu gets pissed, Negreanu fires back, people watch Doug's influence grows, and that's just sort of the plan. And it's very strategic, and you know, different strokes for different folks. It's not a thing that I personally could ever really do. I don't think it's not authentic to like who I am, I guess, is like trying to tear people down just so that I can grow my brand. But I do see, you know, I see the strategic nature of what he was doing.
Yeah, but I personally believe that it's hard for me to separate the online persona from the real life, because I just am who I am. Like there's no like putting on a show for my videos. Like when I turn on the camera, like I'm me. So if I'm dragging this energy from like calling someone out, that's going to seep over into my life. And I just don't like that type of energy. Like I don't like the combative type of energy. So when he was like doing it for show or doing it for marketing, it's just something that I could never really do, because it would affect me in my daily life. Like that negative energy that I'm putting out in towards Doug or towards Sean is actually in my life now. Like it's not a marketing thing. It's not a video thing. It's like, no, this is affecting me, you know? So it's just not something that I'm ever want to do.
Yeah. And I like feeling good, and I like laying my head down on the pillow and being happy with who I am. And so changing that just to grow audience for me would just, it would just be it would never happen, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't actually judge them for doing it. Like I said, I see the marketing value of it, and it just is what it is. Let's see. Let's do some lightning round questions, man. And then we'll get you out of here. What's some common poker advice you hear that you completely disagree with?
Common poker advice that I hear that I disagree with. Oh, this is a tough one. You put me on the spot here. I'm stumped, man. This is a tough one for me.
It's okay. You can be stumped. That's fine. We'll just move on to the next question. Maybe given some time, something will pop up in your brain.
Okay.
If you could gift all poker players one book to read, doesn't have to be about poker, what would it be and why?
Okay. So I think I have one book. I have one book that I've invested my time and energy in relation to poker, and I think it's pretty timeless. The problem with poker books is as soon as you print them, they're starting to become outdated. But this particular book, I think, does do really well, standing the test of time, and it's Advanced Applications of No Limit Hold'em by Matthew Janda. And it's something that I recommend to anyone that wants to think about No Limit Hold'em and at a higher level.
Shockingly, that's the first time applications by Matthew Janda has been mentioned on the show. Yeah, out of over 100 guests, that's the first time.
Wow.
Which is very surprising. And yeah, it's just kind of a must read for poker players, aspiring poker players specifically. If you could wave a magic wand, change one thing about poker, what would it be?
Change one thing about poker. I don't know, man. It's such a beautiful game. It stood the test of time. You know, Doyle Brunson was playing this game riding on a horse to different towns in Texas. I love the nostalgia aspect of poker. And I'm like a traditionalist in so many ways. Like when an NBA team changes their jersey, I don't like it. Like I want them to go back to the 80s version of their jersey.
Let's go back. You got your magic wand. Like maybe Cash plays in Vegas, right? Like that's
that is a huge one. I absolutely love that. Having the bricks of cash on the table where you can just like put them in the middle. That was really fun.
Yep, I agree. That was fun. And apparently it was easy to launder money as well, which I think is ultimately why they got rid of it. But yeah, that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
if
That's
I could
the thing
change, here's something that I will say is that I wish that there wasn't so much regulation around poker in general. Like, why can't we just get a group of people together to play poker in whatever state that we want to play it in, whatever country that we want to play it in? If you want to fire it up on your computer, that, like, I just miss the freedom with poker. You know, the freedom of it being a social game and getting together with your friends and like beating someone out of money, having them beat you out of money without the government saying like you're not allowed to do that, or you have to be on Indian land in this state if you want to do that. You know, it's just it's really unfortunate.
That 1,000%. I mean, let's play cards. Like, it's basically because poker is kind of positioned as this gambling casino game when I think the reality is it's not. And that's really been the heart of everything that kind of bad that has happened through the years. Plus, you know, the poker platforms in the early 2000s didn't have the vision to invest into lobbying, which was kind of a giant blunder. If you could erect a billboard, every poker player's got to drive past on the way to the casino, what's it say?
I think one of my biggest pet peeves in poker is people berating other poker players at the table for their play. So I think the billboard would say, just say nice hand.
Just say nice hand. It can also say, you're not that great yourself, buddy.
I've white knighted like beginning poker players more than my fair share of times at the poker table when I see like a reg or a bad winner or a bad loser talking to a newer player. I just feel like there's no place for that in the game, and it's horrible.
Well, it kills the game. You know, we're in this, you know, as content creators specifically, I think something that's, you know, near and dear to our hearts is growing the game and introducing poker to more people and building the market. And that's a thing that does not do that. That is the anti growing the market. That's leaving people leave the table with a bad taste in their mouth, and they don't want to play poker ever again because it's associated with some bullshit because somebody that thinks they know a lot more than they do had a bad day. And that to me is just shitty. And yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah.
What's something folks would be surprised to learn you're horrible at?
Well, okay. So I think that they would be surprised to learn that I'm actually horrible at talking to a camera. Like if there's no one around and I'm trying to film a YouTube video, I literally have to like jump around and like get my energy up, because if I just did it how would normally default to doing it, you guys would think that I'm dead. Like I am like, hey guys, I'm Johnnie and I'm here to talk to you about poker today. Like that's my natural state. So I'm horrible naturally at doing that. I have to like remind myself that like, hey, I'm alive. I'm a human being. Like jump around a little bit, like communicate who you actually are and stop being so like neurotic about being professional.
Yeah, for me, it takes like basically 20 horrible takes to kind of fire me up and be like, motherfucker, this is a 2-minute thing I'm trying to do here. I've been sitting in front of the camera for an hour and a half. Let's fucking show some emotion and get this done right. Until that moment where I get fired up, it's like monotony. I'm forgetting words. I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
So what's your current big goal as related to poker?
So we talked about a little bit about this before we started the official show. I used to have this like disdain for tournament poker, but I'm slowly turning around to the idea of playing it more. And I think my tournament poker resume is essentially just playing the main event for like the last 10 years or so. And I think I want to start playing it a little bit more just because I recognize that there's value there. And now that I'm creating a consistent income outside of poker that allows me to like, you know, buy more lottery tickets, I want to start having a goal of doing better in tournaments. Because at the end of the day, I'm not that experienced And when we get down to the ICM and, the real knowledge that you need to have for executing late stage tournaments, I'm a complete novice. I have my poker intuition from all the years of playing, but I want to become much better, and I want to have some hardware to back it up.
Good, man. I feel that. And it's very weird hearing me say that in today's day and age after 17 years of kind of scoffing at tournaments. But I understand. Like, they're fun and they're a test of skill. And I think that, like, honestly, over the years, realizing how much skill there really is, and it has its own draw, and having money that's coming in also kind of gives you the freedom to not feel irresponsible by playing a tournament instead of grinding cash for 10 hours.
Yeah.
What's the project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
So I haven't really talked about this publicly at all yet. I've been working on this project that started off in the physical trading card space. What we wanted to do was I got together with a couple poker friends. It's crazy. So every year that I've been a poker player, there's been like these new trends that come out. Like 5 years ago, it was daily fantasy sports. And a lot of my friends left poker to go into daily fantasy sports. Things that are like analytics based and data driven, I feel like poker players kind of gravitate towards. So a lot of my friends left poker to go into DFS. And so lately, sports card trading has become like another thing that there's not a lot of data analytics to support sales and the market. So we got together and they like, we should build this data product where it analyzes the trends of sports cards. So we started doing this. It's pretty hard. It's pretty difficult because we have to scrape eBay data. But then NFTs came out and NBA Top Shot, and we're like, we did a little pivot, and now we're creating a data-driven product around sports digital moments. We're starting with NBA Top Shot. We're going to eventually have it with NFL, NHL, whatever, when they come out. So more than creating a data-driven piece of software, I'm just falling in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur. It's like something that I didn't grow up doing. And as I've created this life through hustling as a poker player, and now through learning about marketing, through creating content, I have this like entrepreneurship kindling fire inside of me that's growing year over year. And regardless of this project that I'm working on, I'm always going to have this now. I feel like it's grown inside of me, and marrying something that's data driven, that like is nerd at heart, with entrepreneurial is just like the perfect thing for me. So near and dear to my heart is the new entrepreneurial life that I'm chasing.
Is it going to be like, how is it facing? Is this like software that you're going to use privately, that you're going to have a team use, or is it like customer facing?
It's going to be customer facing. So you have your portfolio. I don't know if you're in crypto, but like you have your portfolio of cryptocurrencies.
I'm in poker, Mr. Vibes. Come on, man. I'm in crypto. Like the place where I was grinding forever has been Ignition. So like, no more 3K checks from fucking Singapore anymore. Once Bitcoin kind of hit God, I can't even talk. Hit Ignition as a payment processing option.
Yeah. So I'm sure you have Blockfolio on your phone then?
No, I don't have that.
Oh, okay. So
with all that said, I don't have that.
It's an app where you can just kind of like put in how much crypto you have, and you wake up every day and you kind of like look at it and like what's up, what's down, and all in one place. So we kind of want to have this for your digital portfolio, where you can put it, like it communicates with the blockchain, and it's like, oh, you have LeBron James and Cristiano Ronaldo, and it like tracks your portfolio and what's the performance been over the last week. Oh, LeBron James has an ankle injury now. What's that doing to your portfolio? So we want to kind of gamify it in a way and turn it into like the stock market, like in a way. And
it's like a Robin Hood of NFTs or something.
Yeah, like create an index around players and like be the source for you to check up on your portfolio and track and even do some research on certain players. Like, I want to see how this certain player has performed in the last 12 months. Let's pull up the chart, and like they come to my website, which is going to eventually be called index. the moment.
Awesome, man. That's a great idea. And I'm sure there are tons of people listening who are very, very interested, who also love the NFTs. And, like you said, every few years, it's another thing. And crypto is another thing that's kind of been big in the poker world over the last probably 3 or 4 years. And I totally get the entrepreneurship bug too. Like, it's a really amazing feeling selling things. Like to me, it's like, I go to sleep, I wake up, I've made some sales, and I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool. Like, I
think if you trace it back to the root though, you're creating something that you feel has value. And there's like a sense of pride in you creating this thing. And then when people validate it by purchasing it, that's where the connection comes in. You're like, wow, I created this thing and other people besides me now think that it has value. So that's what it is. Those sales are rolling in. It's validation that you are putting good content, good products out into the world.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And it's trust too, right? It's saying like, I trust you that when I invest my money into you, you're going to give me value in return. And like, that's just a really cool, it's just really a really awesome feeling. So final question, man, where can the Chasing Poker Greatness audience find more about Johnnie Vibes on the World Wide Webs?
So I made it pretty easy. You just go to johnnyvibes.com and I have links to my YouTube channel. I have merch that I make that's like a creative project. Basically everything to my socials is on johnnyvibes.com. But yeah, like I said, YouTube is like my favorite place because I get to be the most creative on YouTube. And I have multiple channels on YouTube now. I have the Johnnie Vibes channel where I primarily talk about poker and poker vlogs and how I play hands and things like that. And then I have the second channel where it's a conversational format, kind of like how we're doing it, called Embrace the Grind, where I talk about a little bit more than poker. Talk about poker. I talk about things that I'm doing in crypto. I talk about real estate. I talk, because I'm buying a property in Tulum right now. I talk about NFTs and things like that. So, and I have guests on mostly from the poker world. So it's a fun space to just have conversations. So that's my second channel, and I'm actually starting a third channel that's going to be sports related and NFT related, where I'm going to get together with friends and talk about sports. And it's crazy. Like, I grew up loving sports, and I have all this useless, what I thought was useless sports knowledge, and now, so many years later, I get to talk about all these things that were once useless in my mind.
Yep. Nothing's ever truly useless. When are you going to find time to sleep? 3 YouTube channels and actually playing poker. Like, how do you, and you have a family, like, what are,
oh my gosh. I basically, what happens is I don't get it done. Things get pushed to the next day and pushed to the next day. But partially that's my own fault. I'm a perfectionist with my content, and I want to be the not more than the executive producer. I want to be the actual producer. And if I ever want to scale, I have to fix that problem. I have to be able to have someone help me create content. And I'm in the process of trying to do that now with a guy who used to work for Live at the Bike, Patrick Curran. He was the producer of their videos. He's going to be working with me, and hopefully he'll be able to just reach inside of my brain and put it into video, and I can be a little bit more hands off, which will allow me to do more creative things that aren't involved with actually producing the video.
Yeah, you just got to let go of the control, man. You just got to let it go and trust in somebody else. And it's going to be a little different than the way you would do it, but if they're doing the best job that they can, some of those differences might be superior to the way that you did it before, and freeing up that time and energy is just invaluable.
100%. And it's crazy. This goes back to the poker thing. We identify as poker players. And now that I've been making videos for 3 years, I identify myself as a video editor, and I have a style, and these are things that I take pride in now. So now if someone else is editing the video, that takes away a little bit, it chips a little away at my identity.
For sure. 100%. It's a hard thing letting go of control. And the reality is, though, I think the conclusion I've ultimately come to, and we'll end on this point, is that none of us are all that unique or special. There's always somebody else that can do exactly what we do just as good as us if we look for it. And you just have to trust that they're out there, and, just let go of control.
I mean, probably better in a lot of cases. I heard this recently, and I think it's pretty true. All the unique thoughts in the world have already been had. Like, we're just recycling other people's thoughts, and creativity is just a variation of someone else's idea, and that's fine.
Yeah, I had that thought 3 years ago. I heard that joke on Twitter like just a few months back. It's a good one.
Yeah, no, that's a good joke. I actually thought of that before you thought of it.
Johnny, it's been great having you on, man. We'll get you on for round 2 in the very near future. Keep on keeping on. And it's been a pleasure. I've very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great connecting with you, man. And I found that we're so similar in so many ways. We've been in this game for so long. We've followed a similar cash game trajectory where we were like, this was our life. Now we're creating content. We got a wife, all these changes that are happening in life. So it was really great connecting with you as well.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Chasing Poker Greatness. If you have yet to subscribe to the show, please take a second to do so on Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts may be. For more content from me, Coach Brad, please visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/enhanceyouredge, and I'll see you next time.